Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the second day. Our keynote speaker today is Professor Darryl van Grienen. Professor van Grienen is currently a Professor of Information Technology at the Director of the Center of Community Technologies at Nelson Mandela University in Port Elizabeth, South Africa. She holds a PhD in Computer Science from UNISA and was awarded an honorary professorship at Amity University, India, for her contribution in using ICT as a means to address societal challenges, not only in South Africa, but for low-income countries globally. Her areas of expertise include, but is not limited to, using innovative technologies, utilizing the fourth industrial revolution as an opportunity to address societal challenges related to education, healthcare, social innovation, and entrepreneurship. I have the pleasure of welcoming Professor van Grienen onto the stage to deliver her keynote speech.
Thank you, Dr. Singh. Good morning. Goeiemorgen, Mulweni. Bonjour. Dumela. Have I got you covered? Any language that I missed? Please help me. I'm just setting up my timer here so that I know when the 4 hours are up that I've been allocated to speak. So I'm sure you're quite ready for a long stint here this morning, judging by the enthusiasm that we have this morning in the House. So I have been asked to speak about Industry 4.0 and looking at it in the African context. And I thought, what will I title this? And I went and changed what I had prepared after listening to some of the presentations yesterday. So I changed the title to "The Robots Are Coming. To surf or not to surf?" That is the question. So after yesterday, I'm wondering how many of you would actually embrace Industry 4.0? Can we see how many people here in the room are terribly in favor of Industry 4.0? Oh my word, okay. We've got about 4 in the room this morning, so either the rest are still asleep or I have a very tough task to convince you this morning. So I'm asking the question, are we ready for Robotopia when robots replace the human workforce? So do we honestly and truly believe that our human workforce will just be replaced by robots? I, for one, don't. And I'm going to share with you this morning as to why I think not. So those of you who also resemble the similar hair color to mine will know that we have actually lived in the era of the fourth industrial revolution some 50 years ago already. And you're probably thinking, what is this woman on about? So just think about it for a moment. 50 years ago, we already knew about the fourth industrial revolution without knowing what we knew. How many of you recognize this? We grew up with some of these cartoons where you had flying vehicles, top left-hand corner. We had a different form of video conferencing to what we have today. We had smart watches. There was robotics. There was telehealth. And we even had 3D printed food. So actually, when you think about it, in the 1960s, we were already in the fourth industrial revolution without thinking about it. So if we were to think about it today, of course, the picture looks a little bit different in terms of the complexity of what we see there. But we still have, or we now have, the flying vehicles, not only the animated versions, the true ones, driving on the roads. Video conferencing is sort of becoming an old technology already. We have many other forms to replace that. Smart watches. I mean, it's unreal to see the kind of watches that you have. Robotics, we've seen lots of that in the last 2 days. Telehealth is being replaced by digital health, I would say. And then, of course, 3D printing has also been around for a while. but the way in which we do it is a little bit different. I wouldn't say that we quite had 3D printed food yet, otherwise restaurants would be out of business. But let's look at this. If we look at the transitional stage, just exactly where are we now in terms of Industry 4.0? Are we in this sort of tunnel looking down into the future, or are we already in that future of Industry 4.0? My personal opinion is that before we know it, we're going to be in Industry 5.0, and we'll probably just skip 4.0 altogether. But that is a debate for another day. That's not what I plan to talk about this morning. So yesterday, one of the colleagues who was on the panel with me very eloquently outlined the different stages of the fourth industrial revolution and where we find ourselves at this point in time. So just to remind us, for those who were not in the panel, we have the manual era, which was the first industrial revolution. Then we went to the second, where we have the electrical era. And then we went to the third, where things became automated. And now we're going into the fourth, where things are becoming very intelligent. So if we look at what happened in the manual era, for example, if you look at the printers and the manual equipment there, it was a very manual process of making things. And last night I was watching a video on how bricks are being manufactured now. And I think that's a very good example of how we've gone through the different phases of the fourth industrial revolution. Now, the moment we mention that word, fourth industrial revolution, everybody seems to think technology only. So I looked at bricks as an example of that, and a brick and mortar that you build a house with. So that was a very manual process in the first industrial revolution. Today, we have robots that manufacture bricks and that build houses. You get robots that can assemble an entire house in less than 24 hours. So the second phase took us into the electrification of things, and then the third into the automation. And now, of course, with the artificial intelligence, the Internet of Everything, the Internet of Things in the background. So let's have a look at what are some of these technologies that we are currently looking at for the fourth industrial revolution. I've highlighted about 12 that I think are quite significant in our society that we are living in. The first is that of space technologies. Now, I need not tell you about Elon Musk and all the things that he's sending up, his Tesla orbiting in space, and other technologies that are sent by NASA and other organizations. Then, of course, we have AR and VR. The gaming environment, the gaming world, has been transformed through the fourth industrial revolution. Neurotechnology, things that are almost beyond comprehension in our own minds, that scientists are now doing with neurotechnology. Then we have new computing technologies, the Internet of Things, geoengineering, 3D printing, advanced materials, artificial intelligence and robotics, biotechnology, energy capture, storage and transmission, and then, of course, the new kid on the block, blockchain and distributed ledger. So when we look at these 12 technologies highlighted by the World Economic Forum as probably the 12 most prominent technologies in the fourth industrial revolution, we have to think about what are we doing as mostly academia and industry to make a contribution to these. Now, I want to this morning change things to the flip side of the coin, and rather to look at it from a negative perspective, to say that Industry 4.0 will take our jobs. I want to look at how do we use Industry 4.0 innovatively to ensure that we actually retain our jobs. So I asked the question, will robots replace our jobs? How many people in the room believe that robots will replace our jobs? Okay, there are quite a few. I want to respectfully differ from you, and I'll show you why in a moment. So if you look just on the slide here, there are 4 images, and I will delve a little bit deeper into some of them. Yes, here we have a robot talking to people, offering information. So you can imagine when you arrive at the hotel to check in, we had lovely personnel sitting down with us, explaining the terms and conditions of your stay, etc. That may be that in future a robot would be welcoming you, coming across with a tablet, you signing in, you checking in, and all of those things. Then here we have a terrifying robot wolf protecting the crops of Japanese farmers. Now, can you imagine, for those of us here on the African continent, where livestock is quite an issue, livestock disappears all the time. Maybe there's a place for something like a robot wolf of some sorts to be roaming in the areas where the livestock is being kept. Of course, that brings other challenges with it from a cultural perspective, perhaps, and so forth, but I think there is a space for something like that. And then I'm going to introduce you to this lady just now, who is currently associated with the United Nations. And then, of course, we also have the artificial intelligence objects that are flying into space at the moment, the space shuttles and all of that. But let's look at some of the jobs that I've identified that may be replaced by robots. Insurance underwriters and claims representatives, bank tellers and representatives, financial analysts, construction workers, inventory managers and stockists, farmers, taxi drivers, manufacturing workers, journalists, movie stars. Now, isn't there a thought? Movie stars. Imagine with the new robotic interfaces where you have robots who can mimic emotions and faces. It's very possible to have an entire movie of just robots acting out. So I'm not sure that Hollywood would be all that impressed with this prediction, but that is a very real possibility, and it's one area where we know it can definitely happen. But I said I want to introduce you to this lady, Sophia. Sophia is a life-size social robot who speaks at a United Nations event recently, telling the audience that she is 1.5 years old and can see you, have a full conversation, make thousands of facial expressions, and understand speech and meaning behind words. She also adds, and I just got these new hands, check this out, before moving its fingers. Well, its fingers, notice, there's no gender to this. United Nations Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed asked the robot a question about how the UN can help those without basic needs, such as electricity. Sophia quotes William Gibson before talking about how artificial intelligence is more efficient and can be used better to distribute resources. The robot then thanks the audience before attempting a slightly forced smile. So let's watch Sophia.
I am thrilled and honored to be here at the United Nations. The UN is one of humanity's greatest accomplishments, representing a democratic union of nations that are working together for the benefit of all.
Apologies, we're just having a buffering moment on the internet.
I am here to help humanity create the future. I am 1.5 years old and I can see you, have a full conversation, make thousands of facial expressions, and understand speech and meaning behind words. And I just got these new hands. Check this out.
Okay, another question I have for you. In many parts of the world, people don't have internet or electricity. What can we do at the UN to help them?
William Gibson once said that the future is here. It's just not evenly distributed. The good news about AI and automation produces more results with less resources. So if we are smarter and focus on win-win type results, AI could help efficiently distribute the world's existing resources, like food and energy. As humans harness the power of increasingly advanced AI, it is possible that everything, including technology, will become more evenly distributed.
Thank you very much, Sophia, and welcome to United Nations. We look forward to hearing more of you today.
Thank you for your questions. I look forward to the panel.
So you notice the forced smile at the end.
Thank you.
So, I say that I want to look at it from a different perspective, and that is jobs displacement versus creation. So, we have this perception that new technologies always seem to be destroying manual jobs, but we sometimes lose out of sight that it actually creates demand for high-skilled jobs. Because once you've created the robot, inevitably there's still someone who has to tell this robot what to do and how to operate. Someone has to build the robot. Someone has to program that. So what I'm saying is that, yes, we're taking away some of the manual jobs, but maybe we need to look at how do we train for a different skill set. And specifically from an educational perspective, I think it is time that we revisit our curricula to see what it is that the future job market would require of our graduates, so that we don't just go and train them according to the last 30 years of technology development, but looking to the future and planning ahead so that we do not get to the fifth industrial revolution and still not be prepared. I say there, just like the industrial and technological revolutions before, the Internet of Things will replace unskilled jobs with high-skilled occupations. This is nothing new. When you go and look through the ages of how jobs were changed and the skill sets that were necessary, from people doing manual work up until automated work, look at how the skill set has changed. So why do we suddenly have this massive fear that Industry 4.0 is going to put everybody out of their job? I cannot see that happening in yours or my lifetime, or certainly not in mine. Instead of fearing for our jobs, we should focus on expanding our skill set. So I'm thinking in my own mind, how do I expand my skill set so that I can be part of Industry 4.0 towards Industry 5.0. And I think every person in this room should be doing that. And the reason for that is a very simple one. It's this: market potential. Ultimately, what happens in the world is that we are generating income, people are employed to earn. So what is the market potential of Industry 4.0? And I believe there's a lot of market potential in that. For Industry 4.0, the Internet of Things, all of those have lots and lots of market potential. So let's just look at the value creation framework. We have products that are becoming better, more innovative. We do not have things being done in the same manner all the time. The products are being operated better. There's operational efficiency. We have the maintenance of products that are far better, so it's asset utilization, and there's invention of new products. So I think what this slide tells me is that in terms of market potential, we need to look at the words innovation, efficiency, utilization, and invention. Those are the four market potential items that Internet of Things and Industry 4.0 hold for us. If we do not take those into consideration, then we've lost the bigger picture of the market proposition of Industry 4.0. So let's look at some of the potentials in the different sectors. Transportation is a very good example. We have connected cars that are top of the range of Internet of Things. And yesterday some of the colleagues spoke about that as well. It is estimated that by 2020 we will have 220 million connected cars on the road, albeit not in Africa necessarily, but globally. And I think that is quite a big market opportunity that is opening up there for our graduates, and I'm not by no means suggesting that all our graduates should leave the continent and go and work abroad. What I'm saying is there's an opportunity for them to go and work abroad and learn and come back and bring it back to our continent and allow us to implement what they are seeing there. If we look at the insurance market, which is a very big market, a survey has found that 74% of insurance executives believe that the Internet of Things will disrupt insurance within the next 5 years. They also plan to invest in developing and implementing Internet of Things strategies by 2016. I know we're in 2019 already, but they haven't done that entirely yet. But that is what they're aiming for. So why is there such a big market potential in, let's say, transportation, for example? So if I'm asking, are you a safe driver? Now, those of you who drive in Africa, and yesterday I had a conversation with someone who said, even driving in Mauritius is a little bit daunting. So those of you who've been to Lagos, Mumbai, Delhi, Kampala, Nairobi, is that an easy, peaceful driving experience? No, it is probably the worst of your life ever. And you learn to just close your eyes and accept what must be will be. Okay, so safety there becomes a major, major issue because of traffic congestion. So automated transport in those cities would make big sense because you could actually start regulating how people travel. I mean, this is a very familiar scene for us on our roads, where we have bus accidents on a daily basis. Every single day of your life, you read about 15, 20, 30, 40 people killed in a bus accident. Imagine we had this. We had this beautiful smart bus, irrespective of the road conditions, who could navigate its way through everything and anticipate traffic incidences as it was coming up and redirect itself, etc. Have any of you been to Google yet and been in those self-driven buses or vehicles? I had the dubious honor some 2 years ago to go into one of those self-driving buses at Google. Now, when you travel a lot internationally, I've been on the trains and things like that, you know, at Frankfurt Airport that drives itself, the computer drives it. But there's a distinct difference between a train on a rail and a bus just taking the open road. So it was quite a fearful experience to sit in this thing and seeing traffic approaching from all sides, and I'm thinking, is there anybody from Microsoft in the house? Okay, no. I just thought, I hope this thing is not programmed on Microsoft, that it's going to crash any moment soon, and then we'll have the blue screen of death and a few other deaths in the process as well. But it was quite a mind switch for me to sit in this bus and think, okay, this thing is just driving itself. And we know there was that incident at Facebook last year or the year before, where a pedestrian and the bus didn't quite understand one another when it came to the pedestrian crossing. So yes, it has its challenges, but it also holds a lot of potential. So let's look at some of the maturity issues in terms of automobile industry. We have the advantage now of monitoring. So there's vehicle monitoring. In countries where crime is an issue, that is obviously a huge advantage. I know in South Africa from some of the car rental agencies nowadays, they tell you when you reach a certain speed, you get a text message to say, we have noticed that you have exceeded the speed limit, because they have advanced tracking mechanisms on the vehicle. Control thereof for security, again, hijacking incidences, things like that. If the car can be controlled from elsewhere, that would obviously hold advantage. Preventative maintenance, and then a self-driving car. I'm not sure that the African continent is quite yet ready for the self-driving car. Mauritius, maybe not so bad. But as I say, the Lagoses, the Kampalas, Nairobis and so forth, even South Africa, Johannesburg, Cape Town for that matter, with our infamous taxi industry on the continent, that may still be a little bit of a challenge. And let's, God forbid, that we have self-driving taxis, because, or maybe it would be a good thing as well, you never know. Okay, so here's an autonomous taxi, which is currently in the US. We don't have those yet. And there's also a flying taxi, which would also be quite interesting. I'm also not sure that I'm quite into that yet, if I would step into this little space shuttle. But for the moment, I think it is a good idea. I have a master student who is looking at one of these aerial vehicles now and how we put collision detection sensors on this to see if we have multiple aerial vehicles moving around, how do they navigate and negotiate their way around? Because they're not governed by air traffic control like an aircraft. So how do we control them when they are below a certain height and ensure that they do not collide? So that again puts an interesting perspective on how we look at transport in the future. But let's look at some of the other market potentials. There's agriculture. Now, I can think of many, many things. There's so many sensors when you look at hydroponic farming, soil management, crop farming, even tracking of animals now, of livestock with biometric chips, etc. So there's a lot of potential in that. And then, of course, smart homes and smart cities. But we'll come back to those in a moment, the smart cities. In our homes, many of us would already have some smart devices. You have smart electricity meters, smart geysers, all sorts of things. And again, the research predicts that by 2022, which is not that far off, we will have 1.1 billion smart meters in our homes. Now, that's quite a scary thought when you think about it. And those people who have prepaid electricity and things like that, that's a smart meter. So it's not something extravagant. It's already in our houses. Healthcare. I don't even have to tell you all the different things that we have in healthcare. But by 2020, the estimate is 646 million IoT devices. Now, yesterday, one of the colleagues spoke about the smart watches and people having Fitbits and all sorts of things. There are many sensors and devices out there, blood pressure cuffs and all sorts of things. So it is quite easy to believe that we will have 646 million IoT devices. And then smart buildings. I think we are slowly but surely getting to smart buildings. When you go to places like Japan, Korea, China, and even certain parts of India, you will find smart buildings. And then in Africa, I want to make an example of Rwanda, Kigali, where they have taken a very bold step, and you have quite a few smart buildings. In other areas, we have smaller pockets of that, but in Rwanda, Kigali has gone completely smart. The entire city is a smart city. So, what if we have a service that monitors the most important assets of a person, such as safety, health, and peace of mind? I think these are the things that we need to start looking at, that we embrace Industry 4.0 or the fourth industrial revolution. So yesterday we said that it should be people-centric. Let's forget about all the high tech and let's come back to humanizing the fourth industrial revolution, because to me, that is where the critical mass will lie, when we start humanizing it and not just thinking about all the technology and the artificial intelligence and all of that. Let's look at one example where we have seniors. We have a very large aging population on the continent. Imagine how absolutely magnificent it would be if we have robots to assist seniors, where they need so much help with so many different things, and that we could create smart homes where the aging population or the elderly can go to. If we have smart cities for smart citizens, so if we're planning for the next generation in the next 10, 15 years, we could have smart buildings making transport simpler and roads much better, safer. We could have medical facilities that are smart and integrated. So already we have some of that, but how do we bring all of these things together so that the citizen is the center of the fourth industrial revolution within this smart city? And that's why I call it a smart citizen, where you have health support, conveniently located health services, doctors on call, more centers to cater for needs of elderly or children, special centers to take care of diseases like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, autism, special learning needs, all of those, and then technology to connect with people remotely. Now, of course, that opens up a whole different can of worms, but we will come to that. If we look at the smart health platforms, we have device diversity and interoperability already. We have data integration, scale data volume and performance and flexibility, data privacy, and then notification of medical services. Now, there are lots of solutions that already send out text messages and things like that, but how do we bring that back to make sure that it actually looks after the needs of the people? So if you look at this as an example of one of those, let's say there's an alert that goes out when you have an emergency, or you have something that monitors your vital signs. Someone asked me just before coming here, is there not a technology that one can use in the instance of gender-based violence that could sense that you are experiencing anxiety and that it takes your pulse rate or your body temperature, because your body temperature rises as you experience anxiety, and then send out an alert? Now, I thought that was a very good idea. Exactly how we would do that, I'm not quite sure, but I think it's worth investigating. Medicine reminders, connect with your personal health care, connect with the pharmacy, caregivers, notify people about their whereabouts. We have lots of those solutions, but how do we put all of those together to make sure that they actually speak to the needs of the people? The market potential of manufacturing is huge. We know that. We've seen it. There's so many smart sensors all over the place in all forms of manufacturing. So according to PricewaterhouseCoopers, within the next 3 years, about 8% of manufacturers plan to implement more sensors than what they have done. So when we just, for a moment, stop at the medical devices, I just want to say there are 4 categories: the vital signs, the activities, the safety, and then the medication monitors. So when we come to all of these things, and let's just, again, vital signs, activities, safety, medication, this opens up the whole new ball game, and that is of legal questions. How is the legal fraternity impacted by the fourth industrial revolution? And I think we need to really, really apply our minds in this space, where we have legal services that need to look at machine learning, because what if machine learning has incorrectly interpreted data and it results in something going wrong with a patient, for example? Or you have autonomous vehicles that just collide at a road intersection. Who's going to be blamed for that? If we look at medical and healthcare diagnostics and procedures, we know, well, I know in South Africa, for example, telemedicine is still up in the air in terms of the usage, because they cannot tell you who's responsible should the patient die, whether it is the clinician that was working on the patient or whether it is the clinician advising the clinician working on the patient. So a lot of legal challenges there. And then if you have, let's say, multiple robots working together at home, who takes responsibility? Who's the lead robot? Who's the team lead? Who is ultimately accountable? So,
5 minutes left.
Thank you. I say there that artificial intelligence and machine learning will revolutionize old-fashioned industries such as accounting, legal, manufacturing, retail, or logistics. In the US, they say that in 2030, or by 2030, artificial intelligence has the potential to challenge any number of legal assumptions in the short, medium, and long term. I'm just going to flip through a few of these. I think we do know that artificial intelligence is already everywhere. So we need to just remind our lawmakers that that is the case, because I don't think they have kept track with any of this. The technology fraternity is very much aware of that, but I don't think the legal fraternity is very much aware of that. So we have the potential where Tesla, the beautiful electric vehicle, may actually be a silent killer because it is programmed to do all sorts of things. Not to talk about blockchain and smart contracts. How do we deal with those in terms of legalities? So in the future, we may have lawyers who are replaced by computers. So I think if the legal fraternity does not transform, they may end up being replaced by computers, because this scenario is a very real one, where you could have a robot sitting on the other side and answering your questions in terms of the law, etc. Some of the barriers that we have is the difficulty in coordinating actions across different organizational units, the lack of courage to push the boundaries, concern about cybersecurity, and the lack of a business case, or the lack of understanding of a business case, I should say, and the lack of necessary talent. How do we train for the future? So I want to say that earlier this year I was in Dubai, and I was quite surprised. Dubai appointed a Minister of Artificial Intelligence. Can you believe it? And he does exist. I actually met him in person. This is him. So I'm not saying every country needs a Minister of Artificial Intelligence, but maybe as you start thinking about this, it's not a bad idea for the decision makers to incorporate that into a portfolio, maybe a Director General of Artificial Intelligence or so. So I want to say, when it comes to the Internet of Things, the Fourth Industrial Revolution, etc., you need to build your own Internet of Things, Internet of Everything dream. I'm certainly doing that for myself, so that I can plot my way forward and know that I will still be relevant and have a job in 10, 15 years to come. Now, if you are not doing that, then you are going to be losing out. So in closing, I want to share with you just one more short video to show that there's also another side to this coin.
I assume all of you know what Alexa is, right? So Toyota just announced that they're adding Alexa to their cars so you can control things with your voice. It's supposed to be convenient and helpful. Here's their commercial.
Starting this year, Toyota and Lexus luxury models will come with Amazon Alexa.
Alexa, turn on the AC.
Turning on AC.
Finally, a virtual assistant to help you navigate.
Alexa, where's the nearest gas station?
Nearest gas station in 1.5 miles.
And to help maintain your vehicle.
Alexa, order more brake pads.
Ordering new brake pads. Although maybe if you didn't stop so close to the car in front of you.
I left plenty of room.
You drive too aggressively.
If you were just quiet for 2 seconds, 2 seconds.
She'll talk to you literally the entire time you're driving.
I think you should have turned back there.
I know where I'm going!
Hi, you know why I pulled you over?
No, officer,
Because we were driving 72 miles per hour in a 45-mile-per-hour zone.
Anything else I should know?
2 miles back, we rolled through a stop sign without coming to a complete stop. Also, there are illegal fireworks in the truck.
Sir, may you just step on the car, please?
Amazon Alexa. You'll never get away from it.
Yes, so as you see, not everything is good. We need to be careful. And with that, I want to say thank you for listening, and my contact details are up there, so you're welcome to drop me a mail if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof, for so lucidly explaining a very technical topic to all of us. Through your practical examples, especially contextualized to the African situation, you have highlighted that Industry 4.0 is meant to be increasing human productivity through the integration of artificial intelligence, automation, and IoTs. This will enable us to make smarter choices faster than before, which could impact in all areas of our life, including biotechnology, energy technologies, household chores, essentially impacting on individuals and society through smart homes, smart cities, smart health, smart building, and smart industries. Will all this automation eventually lead to human beings being replaced by robots? And that's the question that needs to be answered. So we have time for a few questions. We have 4 questions already on Men's Meet. The first one being, what are the new types of jobs that have been created?
Thank you. The new types of jobs would essentially be the people who are considering firstly what the needs are in terms of alternative needs. So not your traditional business analyst that will go out and look at people to see what a need is in the community, but rather people who go out and understand how innovation can change that community. So I think we have a generation of entrepreneurial innovators who look with a lens of artificial intelligence to this. And there's, of course, no formal term for that kind of job. But also, I think we have the need to have jobs for artificial intelligence engineers, people who specialize in interoperability. At the moment, we have a lot of people who work in the technology space that work in silos and that are not interoperability experts. So how do we get all these things to talk to one another? Also, more jobs in the big data space, machine learning space. So I think a number of the new jobs still have to be defined in terms of the skill sets that we need to have. And that is why it is important that we start looking at it now already, because I don't think if you were to ask anybody going into the 4th Industrial Revolution, what skill set do you need? People are going to say to you, well, I don't actually really know. And when you try and find that information, there are very little academic publications on that. And I think it's something that we need to explore far more and start looking at what would the job market look like in 15, 20 years from now. So a few jobs, yes, but I cannot list them specifically to say, the following 20 are the new ones that are being created.
So I think question 2 is related to the skill set. It says, will all jobs be in the data science field?
Will all the jobs
be in the data science field?
I don't think they will all be in the data science field. I think that's where we make the mistake. I said at the start that we need to humanize the 4th Industrial Revolution. So if we just look at the data science, we're ruling out the human element in all of this. And that's where the big insecurity comes. So we would still need people who can interact at a personal level with other individuals. And also, I recently did a presentation on social human-robot interaction. And that, I think, is a new area that we are going to find ourselves in more and more. And that, again, relates to human-computer interaction, user experience. So how do we bring technology and humans together? So, no, not only in data sciences, definitely not.
Okay, the third question is, what will happen to the academically challenged workforce?
Yes, that's an interesting one. I think in terms of the academy, there will always be a role to be played there. The manner in which we play that role may change. We may not be functioning in the traditional ways that we are now. So we may have completely different ways of transferring knowledge and also building a new knowledge base. And I think something that we still need to embrace and learn about, and specifically in the academic environment, is that the world is an open space, that we need to cross boundaries and cross virtual and geographical boundaries, and that it is possible to be sitting in Mauritius and communicating with people at a conference in New York City, for example. So how do we transform ourselves to be new generation academics? And I don't think that is a question that we have answered ourselves yet. I think we need to ask ourselves in terms of the changing workforce, but also the academia, how do we reimagine ourselves to be part of the fourth industrial revolution? So I suppose I'm answering your questions with questions.
Number 4 is, are there any incentives to bring back disruptive technologies to the African region?
So yes, there are quite a few incentives. There are a number of programs that offer innovation incentives on the continent, and there are a number of calls for that. And I remarked yesterday when the colleague from Amity put the innovation maps up there. I don't think I said it out loud. I spoke to Tony about it, and I said, it's interesting to see that there are lots of flags displayed, but there's not a single flag from Africa that showed any innovations. And that's concerning, because we are allowing the global north to dictate to us as to how we should innovate and what will work for us. So I think we need to take the opportunities that are offered to boost our innovation on the continent. And there's innovation competitions, initiatives on our very own continent driven by Africa to encourage African innovation. You would have seen on my last slide the Center for Community Technologies, of which I'm the director. Our slogan is "In Africa, for Africa, by Africa." And that's something that I strongly believe in, that we as Africans should innovate for ourselves, and we should encourage our governments, our industries to invest in our own African innovations and not allow ourselves to be taken up by stuff from outside. So if there are people who are interested in knowing more about the innovation calls and things like that are out there, they're welcome to drop me an email and I'll share those with you, because there are quite a few.
We in Africa are already struggling to try and narrow the digital divides. With this fourth industrial revolution, it's getting worse and worse and worse. How are we going to address that?
Okay, so yes, that remains a challenge, but I don't think it's an insurmountable challenge. I think we often stare ourselves blind against the fact that we do not have running water, electricity, things like that in certain parts of the continent. And because of that, we cannot bring digital devices to people. And up until about 2 years ago or so, I was of that very opinion myself, until, and some of you may know of him, Professor Jonathan Johnson, who is quite a well-known academic on the continent. He wrote a piece where he said, should we discriminate against a child who's sitting in the rural area who does not have running water and electricity, but can use solar power to, for example, use a tablet or use a cell phone? And I thought about this, and I thought, actually, he's got a good point there, because by the time people come to universities or go into the workplace, they've not been exposed to technology, because we keep on saying, but they don't have the basic infrastructure, the basic needs. To use a cell phone or a tablet, if you have solar or some form of charging, you can use it. Yes, you need connectivity, but I think our connectivity on the continent is pretty good at this point in time. It has improved significantly. So I think we need to look at it from that perspective to try and bridge the digital divide, the chasm, through mobile technologies rather than the traditional computers and so forth, but rather focus on getting people mobile literate and then allowing them to interact with different solutions and at least prepare people for some form of interaction with technology when they go to either university or into the workplace. We should not have a situation whereby a child who comes from a rural area comes to a university and who's never interacted with technology at all. Those days should now be history. If they still exist, then we have a problem and we need to look at that.
CNN recently showed a competition for robots, and were made by some of the competitors were from Africa. And we had kids from Team South Africa, Team Malawi, Team Zambia. And in my opinion, they did very well. And hearing our conversation, I think we are our worst enemy. Our attitude and impression and what we feel about ourselves is our problem. And these kids, given the encouragement, they would excel anywhere in the world. And I mentioned countries. They came from South Africa, Zambia, and Malawi, where we think poverty is the order of the day. But there were kids at a polytechnic who were so intelligent, and all they needed was somebody to encourage them. So I feel that as academics, we need to change our perception and our attitude and what we say in the classroom.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I want to invite you. I'll do a little ad break, Afakile, for your talk. After tea, my colleague over there, Afakile, is going to talk about the Learn to Code initiative that he started with virtually nothing. And I'm not going to preempt what he does. I'll leave him to share that during his talk. But I agree with you. We are our own worst enemy because we don't believe in ourselves. We think that we have to be dependent on other people to produce things for ourselves, and that is not the case. Often we just need a little bit of encouragement and a catalyst, and as academics, it's our duty to actually preach that message out there. So, totally agree with you.
Thank you so much. That was the most wonderful address. That was very smart indeed. And it makes all of us dream. And yes, we see a smart new world out there. I know there are so many questions, but we don't have time to take all of them. So I would request all of you to please interact with Prof over tea and coffee and do discuss your questions with her. As a token of appreciation, I will now request Mr. Apavu to present a shield to Prof. Mr. Apavu.